Blog Talk Radio.
And in those days there were giants in the land, and the sons of the angels of God looked upon the daughters of men and found them fair, and took of them wives, and their sons became of old great men of renown. So they have been mixing with us on a genetic level since the time of Enoch and Ezekiel's will.
Here on Earth we're intrigued by the sun, moon, and stars, and imagine there's got to be planets like ours. So conceive of a face on the surface of Mars, so in need of a meaning and purpose we lost. That indeed they believe that these might be our gods, or that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve, and eventually reach what they seek, and then solve all the problems of man. But they really don't know that they fall in the works of our hands, all but just filthy rags. So we travel the lands to dig up our past. Time elapses and with it are much of the facts. Some imagine that God came in alien craft. They react in this way, they're so desperate for meaning and purpose, but satanic service, they know that they have evil motives. Am I making you nervous? I'm just scratching the surface. The signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. See the signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. In the blink of an eye, all believers will be raptured. Anyone left receives a mark or the caption. This leader will arise, claim his origins are alien, possessed by Satan on the side of the Nephilim. Profess those who left held us back from evolving, and now that they're gone, we'll solve all of Earth's problems. The worship of any one God will be halted, evolving to gods and ourselves be exalted. They'll play on these lines, and in time they'll devise and arrive at a plan that will help hypnotize all the ones left behind, the spiritually blind. He's stolen their souls, now he's stealing their minds. It's already started, we're seeing the signs. Just study the word, prophecies all align. Now chop off the heads of all those who fight at one earth, one world. Aren't you excited? The signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. See the signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. Where will you be in the year 2012? Are they casting a spell they're not ready to tell? It's time to reveal what they tried to keep veiled. Pure evil they hail and they sell it so well. He fell from the heavenly realms where he dwelled, a once beautiful angel that tried to rebel. Expelled from the light into darkness and hell, now a serpent and snake with reptilian scale. He wears a disguise with angelic wings and mimics the truth with a lie so obscene. He always repeats the same thing he told Eve, that you'll be supreme, a king or a queen, that you can evolve to an enlightened being, a god of your own that can do anything. He sees on our souls with this fraudulent scheme in so many ways, but it's all just the same. See the signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. See the signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near.
Why hide yourself with, creating UFO crafts and things like that? Why that deception if that's indeed what's going on?
The creatures figured out that there was one way that they could frighten mankind, and that is to present themselves as technologically superior beings, some physical UFOs.
Why would they want to abduct human beings?
UFO abduction might not be caused by physical occupants, but from creatures living in perhaps what we would call another dimension.
Posing as occupants.
Yes, the same type of interfering, harassing, paraphysical creature in every culture worldwide.
To the horrified astonishment of his apprentice, the elder sorcerer explains how the human mind has been infiltrated by an alien intelligence. Don Juan said to his apprentice Carlos Castaneda, We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our Lord and Master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protests. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of belief, our ideas of good and evil, our social morals. They are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations, our dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, rutinary, and egomaniacal. According to Don Juan, the sorcerers of ancient Mexico called this predator the flyer because it leaps through the air and is like a big shadow, impenetrably black, a black shadow that jumps through the air. The flyers are an essential part of the universe, and they must be taken as what they really are: awesome, monstrous. They are the means by which the universe tests us. Welcome, friends, readers, listeners, and viewers from wherever you may be tuning in. I appreciate your fellowship, your patronage, and thank you for sharing your time and space with me. I'm honored. And I've got a pretty interesting show lined up for you today. I've been doing some research, continued and ongoing, into this whole Nakash phenomenon and tracking down the ancient mythologies, the ancient tales from wherever I can find them about these particular beings and their interdiction into the affairs of humanity. Now, the book that I cited, and I want to say welcome to everybody in the chat room, too. I've got a lot of ancient texts lined up for you to kind of intrigue you and also give you a foundation to go study and research for yourself and see if, like myself, you believe that there are connections between these mythologies and ancient traditions and lost and forbidden knowledge, the secrets, the esoteric secrets contained within the Word also seems to confirm the lunatic fringe nature of this reality, which it is seemingly fantastical, seemingly so mythologically impossible that it is delegated to that realm of mythology and supernatural and placed somewhere in the far regions of childhood fantasy or fairy tale, stories that could never possibly ever be real. And yet what we find through the archaeological record, through the artifacts and everything that we see found on not only this planet, but the heavens also are confirming the strange nature of this reality. And so we are being asked as a people, as truth seekers who've waken up and been introduced to the, again, strange nature of this discernment, we're being asked by the Lord to reassess, reevaluate, and to revisit all of those things that we have accepted as being concrete, all those things that we as a culture, as a world, as a people have agreed to as being reality. Because what we think of as reality, the whole 9-to-5 dream and the, work till you're 65 and then retire and enjoy what little time you have left. They only picked 65 because they didn't think most of us would ever make it. And it's the truth. Most of us never make it to that age. But that's a whole different thing. So we're going to go into this. I'm going to check the chat room, and then we're going to start getting into these texts. All right. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, family. Welcome, everybody. Yeah, it seems like we've got a good eclectic mix of family and friends that have crossed the spectrum of, I've seen a lot of you in a lot of different places, and so I welcome all of you and thank you. And for those of you that are new listeners that are, this is all new to you and you've not been introduced to this show or to the subject matter that we cover here, I always ask you to please never believe anything that I bring forward, to doubt everything that not only myself, but that everybody else brings forward and gives to you and offers to you as truth. That you can't accept any of that without looking into it and researching it for yourself and then verifying the authenticity of the message, of the subject, of the whatever it is that people are trying to share with you, the information. That we have to confirm all these things and not just accept them just because they may come from a place of authority or from a church elder or someone that we accept as a leader. Because I would tell you people, what we're dealing with in the world today is an absence of truth, in that most of those people that think they know truth and are trying to teach it to a lot of the younger generation and those that are coming up in the world, they have no idea. They have no idea as to really the true nature of what is real and what we're dealing with on this planet. The whole Ephesians 6, the powers, principalities, the rulers of darkness of this world. Most people in this world right now even condemn, like I'm talking mainstream churchianity, those that condemn without researching and looking into, different extra-biblical or different pseudepigraphal or apocryphal secret books, forbidden books, because there's so much that's been stolen away and taken from you. And so you shouldn't help them in keeping truth from you. Study all that you have available, especially now in this day and age that we have access to the internet, and that we can type in a few keywords and have millions of bits of information come up at the stroke of a few keystrokes, a few fingertip movements. I mean, that is amazing. The access to information has never, ever been as easy as it is now, so take full advantage of it. We have no excuses for ignorance anymore. There was a time, and it wasn't even long ago, where people had to rely on their pastors, rely on their patriarchs, the people that they considered as church elders. Even in, early history, the language of the scholars was kept away from the lay people so that you could not even read the information for yourself. And so definitely take advantage of the blessings of the times that we're in that you have access to so much information, so many things. And like one area, the Gnostic texts, the Nag Hammadi codices, the ones that were found in 46, right before Israel became a nation, again, a nation. And I think all that is connected and tied too, because I think that when Satan saw Israel coming into being and knew that it was all coming into being again, that this was a sign. This was the sign of the fig tree generation. The parable of the fig tree was being fulfilled. So he knew that he had to get ready and get working on his whole agenda, which the Lord warned us about as being the strong delusion. And notice that when also Israel became a nation in 1947, that we also had the whole incident in Roswell and the beginning of all of that. That is part of the strong delusion, because what Satan is setting up is the whole fallacy that the ancient aliens, of which so many people now are accepting so openly into their belief systems, that the ancient aliens are our benefactors or our creators. And this is not true. This is totally not true. In fact, the fallen angels, or the Anunnaki, or the Archons, or whatever you want to call them, the sky people, the ancient aliens, whatever label it is you want to place upon them, they cannot create out of nothingness like the Father and the Son, who are the true creators that brought all things into being. They can only form or mold or, shift and transform from what already is. And so it's important to understand all of that as well. Oh, I just want to give everybody an update on my book, because there's so many people asking me about it, and I know you can't find it on the web because it's not available until November of this year. But I just did send in the final copy edit. And so I am done with my part. I have no further edits to make. The layout's been done. The cover also has been done. And I was sent a actual hard copy, the first actual hard copy of the book. So it won't be long now. I know everybody's been excited and very patient with me and with the whole process. And so I appreciate that, but I do look forward to everybody being able to get that information. And G4, just so you know, brother, I've got autographed copies coming to you and your family, and I appreciate all of your support as well. Really, I love all of you, really. But going into the information. All right. The Sky People, I want to set this premise up for you on this book. I set the link, I posted the link in the chat room as far as this particular book, because this book is really interesting in that it ties together a lot of knowledge. But the only thing is, and the only thing that is different is, which was strange to me, is that they flip the whole story around. Whereas when I teach about this information of two different creations in Genesis, the difference between the Elohim and Yahweh Elohim, I lay it out as the Elohim being the fallen ones, and as those that were cast out on the second day, according to the book of Enoch, Lucifer and his fallen angels, the seraphim angels, which are these dragon, Anunnaki, reptilian shape-shifting angels. They're called the seraphim angels. And they, when they were cast out on the second day, they have been, since that time, creating, forming, molding cultures, civilizations, megalithic-type structures, way stations across this particular solar system. They've been a part of this solar system ever since their planet, Nibiru, was captured as an interloper planet and became part of this solar system. That was the introduction of, seraphim angels into this particular solar system, and that was also where the focus of the fallen angels came to be on this particular area and this region of the universe. And so the two different creations. The first one, when they came here, and this was a long time ago, this was way before the modern creation of Adam and Eve. It even talks about a time when, and there's two different groups. I guess I better go ahead and explain this as well. Let's talk about the ancient ones, the elder ones, because they're a separate group from the Anunnaki, who are the flesh form, much like spirit men. And the Anunnaki, they have to eat, sleep, dream. They also defecate. They're much like spirit men, but they have longer lifespans, seemingly immortal lives, but they are not immortal. They are not gods. The ancient ones, the elder ones that came so long ago, and we're talking, I don't even know how far back it goes, but you can read somewhat about this. Carlos Castaneda talks about this. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth also talk about this and cite the ancient ones and speaks about how it was when they first came into being, into this particular, dimension, that they were formless. They were interdimensional beings. They did not have yet physical form. And they were etheric beings. They were light beings, able to step down in vibration and to hold form in other dimensions, but essentially they were still much like raw and pure energy. And it was after, I don't even know how long, but it was after a period of time of their continuous interdicting into the material realms that they then became trapped. It was their indulgences in the flesh and their indulgences in being within the flesh and incarnating, into flesh vehicles, that they essentially got trapped up in form. And it talks about that. And the Anunnaki, they also came on the scene. We're going to talk about that as well. But going back to this book, because I have to explain this as well too, and not lose the whole premise. Because the Sky People, this book by Trench, he talks about the Elohim as being the original Morning Star administration, as being the pure ones, the light ones. And then he says that Yahweh Elohim, or the Jehovah gods, he calls, Jehovah, whom we know as Yahweh Elohim, the Creator, the Father, the Most High, he that was, one with the Son and the only begotten, they call him the evil God. And they base this on the Old Testament, going back to, how they say that the God of the Old Testament, Jehovah of the Old Testament, or Yahweh Elohim of the Old Testament, is an evil, vindictive God. And that, because they base that on his wanting to eradicate this hybrid seed line that had taken over Canaan and taken over the Promised Land, the land that he had given over to Abraham and his children once modern-day humanity does come into being. But going back, if you look into the details of the early story, and this is also from the Sumerian and the Anunnaki tradition, they talk about how it was when they first came, they interdicted and they started to create genetic experimentation upon a being that they cite as a primitive worker. They call it a primitive worker. And this pre-Adamic ancestor of, the Neanderthals, the Cro-Magnon, these beings were all part of this primitive worker class that was genetically experimented and brought into being by the Elohim. This is the Genesis 1. But according to Trench, in his book, The Sky People, he teaches it backwards from, or maybe I teach it backwards from what he teaches it, because his work actually predates mine and goes back to, the 50s, 60s. I don't even know how early back, but it's interesting to me that Trench came to these conclusions, and a lot of the ancient alien mythologies and the ancient alien shows, they also teach this same thing. They teach that Jehovah, or Yahweh Elohim, the God of the Old Testament, the God of the Hebrew people, that he is the evil alien God, or that he's much like Enki or Ea. And so that's the only thing that I warn you about as far as this particular book, but it does give you an interesting introspection into the information and how this guy, Trench, came to the knowledge, because he does have discernment on the two different creations of Genesis, and he also has knowledge of the difference between the Elohim and the Yahweh Elohim. But like I said, in my opinion, he has it backwards. And he's associating the Elohim or the Anunnaki or the ancient aliens as being the good guys, and which, that's what a lot of the people are starting to teach now. And that Jehovah or Yahweh or Yahweh Elohim, the God of the Old Testament, the God of Abraham and Isaac, and that he is the evil God. And so now all the other historical references, the mythology that he cites and the stuff that he brings forth to let you know, because he calls the two different beings as being galactic man and earth man, like sentient earth man. And he calls galactic man as being the being that was created by the Elohim, which I call that the primitive worker, which is also what the Sumerians and the Anunnaki themselves call it. And that the sixth-day spirit-filled, breath-filled Adam that came onto scene, he says that it was the, Jehovah, the evil God, that created him. But we know that it was the Creator, the Father, the Creator of all things, of the whole entirety of the universe, everything that you can see, that it was his Son, the Word, that sang the universe, sang the creation into being, and that they're the only ones that can create out of nothing. And that Adam, the modern creation of Adam, was a much greater creation than what the Elohim had accomplished. And see, I cite that as being because it was the Creator and the Father that did bring Adam forth through the Word. Of course, it was Yahushua. The Father and the Son are one. But Yahushua, as the Word, formed Adam in his own likeness, the Trinity. And Adam is a representation of who Yahushua was, because Yahushua is Adam of light. He was the first Adam. And the sixth-day Adam that was created in paradise and put into paradise, that was separated away from the fallen angels that were already here on this planet and their primitive worker and the creation that they were then trying to accomplish, that the Lord placed Adam in a protective enclosure called paradise, and that paradise was not even on the earth, and that it was our fall from paradise and our loss of immortality and our loss of our bright-natured state, and that ended up causing us to have to incarnate into the flesh here on this planet. That whole scenario took place on the 8th day, because that is when our flesh bodies actually came into being. There's a whole discussion of that as well that is contained within the Nag Hammadi codices. That's the only place where you will find the story of the 8th day creation of Adam and Eve, because it was then that they were placed in their fleshly state. The first book of Adam and Eve, from the forgotten books of Eden, the forbidden books of the Bible, the first book and the second book, they give you the stories of when Adam and Eve were cast out of paradise and placed upon the wilderness of the earth. And they do give you a description of their bodies being transformed. However, it does not cite it as happening on the 8th day. So putting those together, you will get an understanding of what had happened to Adam and Eve and why it was they were cast out, and how it was that we ended up being in the flesh and in bodies of flesh, and why it was that we incarnate into flesh now. Let me check the chat room, because I know it's a lot of... Okay, Yelit is asking about the codices. These are the Nag Hammadi codices. NAG space HAMMADI. There's a number of them. But in these codices, and I cite them in my latest book, I explain them in great detail, because it's my opinion not many people understand them at all. In fact, I'm going to tell you that a lot of people teach that Yaldabaoth, who is the god of the lower earth in the Gnostic text, they teach the same thing. They teach that Yaldabaoth is Yahweh or Jehovah. And so they're teaching that the God of the Old Testament is an evil God too. But I'm here to clarify for you and to tell you that Yaldabaoth in the Nag Hammadi codices, he has two other names as well. One of those is Saklas, and the other name is Samael, the angel of death. One of them means blind God. Saklas means blind God. But Yaldabaoth is not Yahweh of the Old Testament, just like as this guy has it wrong in this Sky People book. Yaldabaoth is Satan, and it talks about Yaldabaoth as being the head of the seraphim angels. And we know that Satan drew the 1/3 of the seraphim angels with him when he fell. So, but I clarify that in my next book as well, because a lot of people think that Yaldabaoth is Yahweh of the Old Testament. They won't even go and research these texts for themselves. They won't even look into them. And the reason I cite them as being important is because, according to the text, this is the information that Yahushua brought back once he had ascended into heaven after his resurrection. And then he came back after being with the Father and getting the lowdown on everything, not that he didn't already know it. But he comes back to his apostles on the planet, and he tells them that he's not going to teach them in parable form anymore, that he's going to give them the secrets plainly. And that's what this collection is those teachings that Christ brought to his apostles after his resurrection and death. And that's another reason why I think they're important. One other reason they're important as well is because they clarify, they give detailed information into these fallen angels. They call them the archons. And there's incredible description about their interdiction into the affairs of humanity. And the Lord is telling you who these archons are. And in a way that should make it plain for those that understand about the fallen angels, who they are, the books of Enoch, that have done your research, read the apocryphal books, the pseudepigraphal books, you know about the Nephilim. If you know these things, when you go and you start reading the Nag Hammadi codices, you're going to just be blown away at the information that is being presented. So, let me find a link. I'm going to put a link in the chat room to these. One of my favorite sites on the web is a place called sacredtext.com. And at sacredtext.com, you can pretty much just pick a keyword and pull all the collections and all the wisdom texts that are associated to that particular culture. Whether you're studying, like the Celtic and we're talking collections that you can't find anywhere else, in the world. I've got a link for the collection. This isn't at Sacred Text, but this is also another one of my favorite sites. It's the Gnostic Society. It has a lot of information there as well. Let me post this in the chat room here. Okay, for those that have access to the internet, that want to know more about this, that are willing to research the information for yourselves, here's the link. And I believe there's 13 codices. There's so much information there. It's amazing. And I really don't think there's a lot of people that have a grasp on what the codices are talking about. And that's another reason why I think they should be studied, so that people can discuss them, so that we can talk about them and come to some conclusion on them. And I think they're important. And I also think that's why the Lord allowed them to be found, was to give clarity on what was going to be the strong delusion. Because he knew that once Israel came into being again, and that was the parable of the fig tree, and that was the sign for us as being the last generation, that Satan knew that his time was going to be short, that he had to get busy, and that he had to move quickly on his agenda to establish himself, because he's one of these ancient aliens. He wants to establish the whole premise to set up rule for himself as he comes back as Apollyon, Abaddon, and indwells, in my opinion, which may be Prince William or somebody, but he's going to indwell one of these human beings, and he's going to rule. And he's going to be the one that deceives and leads astray and declares himself as God in the temple and ceases all the ceremonies and the sacrifices. And so all that's coming into play, and that's why you have tied to that whole time frame, the same time when Israel came into being, all of this UFO stuff starting to happen, the Roswell stuff, and all that whole agenda was escalated in such way that we find ourselves where we are now, with ancient alien programs being played on mainstream TV, with the whole denial of Christ and Yahweh, because the ancient alien shows, they give no credence to the God of the Old Testament or to Yahushua as being Savior Messiah from the New Testament. They throw all that out as just fallacies. And they'll tell you this as well. They'll say that those stories, the books in the Old Testament and the New Testament, that all of that is based on Sumerian teachings or, other teachings that are older, which is not true. Is not true, because the Old Testament and the New Testament are only the latest editions of ancient wisdom and tradition that surpasses the flood, that predates Moses, predates the flood, and goes back to even Adam. Because Adam also left information for his son, and Seth left information for his sons, and they passed it down from generation to generation, and all of this was known. All of this was known. And so, no, all the Sumerian, all the pagan stuff, it does not predate Christianity. Christianity is the oldest truth in creation, because it goes back to the Father and the Son, and the Father and the Son predate and pre-exist everything else. So just know that, because that's a lie if they tell you that, even the Sumerian teachings, they're only what was found after the flood. That's the stuff that came up after the flood. We don't even have the stuff that it was available during the time of the destruction of Atlantis. All of that, there's a lot there as well. Yonaguni, the city over there outside of Japan, that the one scientists found underwater, these megalithic temple structures and complexes, and basically we're finding all of this stuff everywhere. That there's temple complexes and cities and structures outside of India, outside of Egypt, outside of Cuba, all the shorelines. They're finding these megalithic type structures, cities, everywhere. Here's another thing that is being done. People are starting to utilize Google Earth and satellite photography to spot what have been considered mountains or hills that are actually megalithic pyramids that predate a lot of this, as far as what we consider modern history for humanity, because the fallen ones predate us. They were here before us. Their stuff goes way, way back. And that's one thing that we're having to accept and unlearn and come to terms with, is that we weren't the first ones here. And that if we're only going to base the history of the universe and the history of the earth and the world on what modern humanity has done, then you're only going to go back some 6,000-7,000 years. But if you're going to look into the presence of the giants, the presence of the Nephilim, the presence of the fallen one, then you're going to go way, way, way back to prior to Noah's flood, prior to the destruction of Atlantis. According to the Sumerian text, we're talking 430-some thousand years is when they first arrived here on this planet. And that the first base that was established, a place called Eridu, the home in the faraway, the first base on this particular planet, that was established by an exiled Nibirian king named Alalu, A-L-A-L-U. And that Alalu left his home planet Nibiru a long time ago, seeking the gold he knew would be here because of their own ancient traditions and mythologies. Because according to what Alalu was talking about in a book called The Lost Book of Enki, in those particular texts, Alalu speaks of a time when his ancestors watched the destruction of Tiamat, or what was the destruction of the first world age a long time ago, when the Lord utilized Nibiru to gut what was then called a planet called Tiamat. And that when this event happened, and this is the event that is cited in the Enuma Elish and also the Akkadian, the Babylonian, the old epic creation tales that give a description of a war between the Lord of Hosts, which is the planet Nibiru, and the watery dragon, Tiamat. That this was a celestial battle, that this was a planetary battle, that this was a description of how our early solar system came into being, and also how Nibiru, as an interloper planet, came to be part of this solar system, and how it was that Tiamat was destroyed, and how out of the carcass of Tiamat, the new earth was reborn. Ki. And how Ki then was moved to where the third planet, where our earth now is. And how this event was the event that made Alalu's ancestors knowledgeable that Ki, or the carcass of Tiamat, was plentiful and littered with an abundance of gold. Because after his ancestors watched the destruction of Tiamat as one of the moons of Nibiru, the moon called the West Wind, gutted Tiamat and destroyed her, cut her asunder, split her in half, is what the texts say. And after she was split in half, it became a molten ball of fire and lava and liquid and volcanoes erupting. And, you know, imagine a planet trying to reshape and reform itself after being devastated. Because that's what took place. That's what happened. And so after Ki was placed and shifted orbits with Mars, that's when life began and what became possible here on this planet. And that's why the Anunnaki and Alalu and his ancestors, that's why they celebrated and honored all of that by citing it and writing it down to where we now have it as these creation tales, these old ancient creation tales. And this is something that happened a long, long time ago. And it wasn't our ancestors that were witness to this, even though the Lord allowed his prophets. Jeremiah gives a description of this destruction in chapter 4, verse 23, where he talks about this, a time when there was no man, and how all the cities of the plains had been destroyed, and all the birds of the heaven had fled. And so the Lord is allowing us to know about those things that had happened a long time ago. Great question, Yeled. Yeled asks, didn't the Atlanteans teach of the Creator or a single God and the highest creation? And yes, they did. This is something that a lot of people don't know. And this is going back to the ancient ones, when they were the etheric beings, these light beings, and when they first came here to the planet. And this was before they got caught up in the flesh, before they started to indulge in the pleasures of flesh. They were still part of the Morning Star administration. And yes, they were sent by the Most High and by his Son. And they came here to create and to form, and they were doing so to help and benefit initially the creation. But it was only after they started to interdict themselves completely, and they decided to create the primitive worker, because when they decided to jump the gun on the evolution of another species, they were breaking cosmic law. They knew this. They talk about this in their own text, about how they knew that what they were about to do was wrong. And that they also talk about a creator of us all. And they talk about the Most High. And they know about him as well. And they know about the Son as well. Because like I said, the first and the only religion, the religion of the Elohim, the fallen ones, they know about the Most High and his Son. And that is the truth that goes back to the beginning. And yes, that was the truth of what was taught prior to even Atlantis. And I'm going to tell you something else. No, I don't cite this very much because I'm not, this is very controversial, but I'm going to just tell you this. This might get me into some hot water. All right. If you study the Nag Hammadi codices, it talks about the eighth day elevation of humanity. And in those texts, there's a story about how the instructor is what is called the instructor. How the instructor taunted Adam and Eve to eat of the tree of good, what is called the tree of good. And this instructor at that particular time was in serpent form. And it talks about how this particular serpent, that Yahushua came onto this particular tree, this tree of good, taunted them to eat, and once they ate of this tree of good, they realized they had fallen where they had fallen from, and also that they were living on the planet with the devils and the demons. And so here's the controversial thing, and I'm not claiming this, and I'm not going to say that this is a certainty. I'm just saying that this might be a possibility, and also might be why people like Philip Gardner teach that the ancient symbol of the serpent was a good symbol. And I'm going to just tell you this, that prior to going back, and this goes back to that particular time, that initially the serpent might have been a symbol for the instructor that woke Adam and Eve up and elevated them in consciousness. And that it might have been, I'm not saying this for certainty, of course. I have not done enough research into this, but I am going to go ahead and mention it since it came up within the context of this show. But that some people cite that Satan later usurped and stole the whole symbol of the serpent, and that he then took over it being a symbol of himself. Now, the whole thing that doesn't make sense to me is if this is a possibility, and they say that there was, that it had one time been a symbol of good, the whole thing I don't understand is if the serpent at any time was a symbol of good, how could that be if it has the association to the ancient Nakash and to the dragon that deceived Eve, led her astray, and caused the downfall of humanity? So that's the only thing that wouldn't make sense to me. But, there are certain people that do say that in the old, ancient traditions of the serpent that initially it was a symbol of good, or that it was a symbol of DNA, or a symbol of the caduceus. I'm not going to go that far. All I know is that in my studies of the ancient serpent and the ancient snake, I find every association to the Nakash of Genesis 3, the feathered serpent that, again, caused us to lose our first estate, that deceived Eve, impregnated her with Cain, brought in his own hybrid child and bloodline, and that ever since that time we've had the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. And so I'm not one of those that ascribes to the serpent at any time being a symbol of goodness. But here's another thing, too. I want to make mention of this as well. And I did a show with Dr. Jerry Lee where he had talked about the symbol, the serpent, the brazen serpent that Moses had used. And this goes back to what I just told you about with the old ancient symbol of the serpent. But from what I understand, the old symbol, the symbol that Moses used of the serpent, the brazen serpent that he put on a totem that became the thing that healed the people from their serpent bites. And it's my opinion that they were actually attacked by the Nakash and not just serpents. But that this particular symbol was a symbol of a seraph, and that the seraph was actually in a shape of the whole prophecy of Genesis 3:15, that it was an angel stepping on the skull, crushing the head of a serpent, and that was the symbol that Moses had used, the brazen serpent, that it was a seraph, and that they translated that seraph, which the seraph, is a singular form of the angelic hosts, the seraphim angels, and that what we come to know as just a brazen serpent on a pole may have actually been an ancient symbol of the angel crushing the head of the serpent. And so possibly, according to Dr. Lee, he said that that symbol predated the serpent that, the snake and it's associated to the Nakash. So if there is an ancient symbol of a serpent that might be associated to goodness, I would say that it would probably be the symbol of the angel crushing the head of the serpent, the seraph crushing the head of the serpent, as Dr. Lee explained it as far as the symbol of that Moses had used, because it seems to me that it would make sense more so because the Lord warned us not to take up idols and to worship serpents and all those things, and so that whole story makes it it seems to make the plausibility of it maybe that much more. All right, another questions here. All right, Yellowed asked this. Weren't we part of that as the opening? Okay, yes, the war in heaven. We're going to go back to that too and talk about that because this is important for how it is that we ended up in the flesh. These are all really good questions. And also I want to let people know that I did just recently list a show for pre-existence, incarnation, and reincarnation. And the reason I did so is because I want to explain the differences and how it is that they tie into the three world ages, the three creations of Adam, and also the differences between judgment and salvation and their connections to incarnation, and also what the elites of the world, the fallen angels, excuse me while I take a sip of water. How it is that they are able to reincarnate, because this is something that doesn't happen for everybody. And a lot of people believe that, that reincarnation is a possibility for all of us, but I'm telling you that that is not the case. That there's, just as there's, the incarnation, the reincarnation is for these ancient ones, these interdimensional beings, the Anunnaki, that are taking form and embodying and indwelling and possessing people over and over through time and generation, through lifetime. So reincarnation is possible, yes, for the evil ones and for the fallen ones, those that are trying to escape judgment. But for us, for those that are the seed of the woman, there's incarnation into flesh, and there's us having our first world age lives, our spiritual lives, where, yes, we took part in that whole world war in heaven. Just to explain this a little bit better for you. And this has everything to do with the three creations of Adam. To explain this, the first creation of Adam, according to On the Origin of the World, is Adam of light. Adam of light is our Savior Messiah, Yahushua. Yahushua pre-existed, was with the Father, has always been with the Father, was never not with the Father, and was not a part of those that have later been created, because he is also creator. He and the Father are one. It's important to understand that. Everything else, including us and all of the other angels, including even the archangels, even Satan, who claims that he was the first archangel created and that Michael was second, Gabriel third, all of those are created beings. We are part of the created beings. We are the sons of God that were created also on the first day. On the second day, when light and darkness were separated, this was when our Lord was given dominion over the creation by the Father. When the Father, the Creator, said, "Let there be light," this is when Yahushua was revealed as the light of the universe to the angels that they had already brought into being on the first day. And before this light came into being, the angels sat in darkness and thought themselves to be pre-existent beings. We were part of that. When Yahushua was revealed, the light of the entire creation was brought into being, brought into visibility. Everything, it's like, in the movie theater when you have everything, you're sitting in darkness, and then the light turns on and you can see all things. Same thing. That's when the Lord talks about all the sons of God, all the angels shouted for joy because then they could see the creation. Not only that, they saw the awesomeness of it and the expansion of it, the incredible nature of just the entirety of it, the overwhelming everything that is the creation, being able to look in any angle, up or down, as far as the eye can see. That's the experience that the angels had when their Lord, our Lord, was called into being. Now, Yahushua speaks about in the book of the Secrets of Enoch how a certain angel, Lucifer, Satan, refused to bow before his dominion and contrived in his heart the thought to be as the Most High himself, and contrived in his heart to elevate his status and to be as God himself. We're talking about a created angel that wants to usurp the authority of the pre-existent Father and Son. He never had a chance. Never, ever had a chance. But his deception was so great that he convinced 1/3 of the angels to side with him. And these angels, these seraphim angels, these dragon angels, they were cast out with him on the second day. On the second day. After that, the Lord allowed all of his angels to be tempted. Lucifer, as Satan, the adversary, his name was changed. Remember in Luke 21, the Lord says, I saw Satan as lightning fall from the heavens. This is during that time. This is the second day. And Satan and his angels, they go to all of the other angels and they tempt them as well to side with him and to join his allegiance. A lot of the angels did, as it says in Revelation, where he swept 1/3 of the stars with him. And after he took control and had the allegiance of these angels on his side, he went to war with the Father and with the Son and with Michael and the cherubim angels that were fighting for the Lord. Now, Yelad had talked about the Ophanim angels. The Ophanim angels were the angels that were under Gabriel. These angels kind of were undecisive in what to do and who to serve. They were the angels of the middle road, of the middle ground, of the middle path. And these angels couldn't decide during the war in heaven what to do. And so as Michael and the cherubim angels fought against Lucifer, Satan, and his seraphim angels, once the war was over, Satan, remember, because we have the council of gods, Satan, as the accuser, accused all of his brethren and all of the angels of the Lord as also having a capacity and a propensity for evil, and that they also would fall into what would later be flesh form. When Lucifer challenges the angels of the Lord and also the Lord himself to come into a fallen state, come into his dominion upon the planet Earth, because this would be where Lucifer, Satan, or Yaldabaoth, he would be head over the material realms. He would be head over the visible universes, over what would become the material worlds. And he challenges the Lord to come into his realm. He challenges the angels to come into his realm. And so the Lord makes decision and decides upon the creation of Adam, sixth-day Adam, Adam of paradise. And Adam of paradise would be created as a condemnation against the fallen angels, because what they were doing in Genesis 1 is they were already upon this planet, not just this planet. We're talking about the solar system too. We're talking about Tiamat before it was destroyed. We're talking about Mars. We're talking about the moon, other planets and other moons of this solar system. They were busy creating, busy setting up their own kingdoms to rule as gods themselves. And it was only after they interdicted themselves into the affairs of this planet and they started to manipulate the pre-Adamic creatures that were already here, what were called the primitive workers, and they started to create a slave race, that the Lord decided to judge them in this capacity and through this scenario. And the second world age came into being with the creation of Adam. Adam was created in sight of the fallen angels. And they lusted after the image that was shown to them. And this story is also contained in the Nag Hammadi Codices. When my book is released, I'll explain all these things in great detail and cite the exact passages that you're going to have to go to reference and verify these things for yourself. But that's when the Lord created Adam to serve as a condemnation for what the fallen angels were already doing. They were already forming and manipulating. They were already involved in bestiality. They were already involved in genetic experimentation. They were already polluting the genome of plants and animals and all the creatures and all the things of the planet, just as we are now with our scientists introducing, animal DNA into plant crops and vice versa. I mean, same thing. And so they had corrupted the world back then to such a degree that the Lord knew he was gonna start it all over. But first he was gonna create his own creature, and that this creature would be wiser and have a greater capacity to think and understand than even the fallen angels. Because Adam, yes, was even wiser than the fallen ones. And so Adam, in his immortal nature, was created and then taken to paradise, placed into paradise, protected by the Father. Satan, and his angels who witnessed the creation of Adam, they lusted after Adam. Adam was much more beautiful or much more incredible and awesome than anything that they had accomplished in their efforts to create a slave race through the primitive worker. Yes, they were able to create Neanderthals and Cro-Magnons and cone-headed people and different types of creatures, but nothing that had the capacity, the ability, nor the beauty that Adam had when our Father, the Creator, brought him into being. And so Satan wanted to create the fall of humanity. He wanted to have humanity join him on the earth in a fallen state. And so he indwelt the form of this Nakash serpent being, snuck into paradise, and tempted and deceived Eve. And when Eve and Adam ate of that fruit, they lost their immortal bright natures. They lost their immortality. They would then have to incarnate into the flesh. And the Lord told them this in Genesis chapter 3. Eve, you're going to now have to give birth to children. Adam, now you're going to now have to work the soil. You're going to have to raise children. Y'all are going to have to feed them. And eventually you're going to die. But I told you not to eat of that tree. You didn't listen to me. This is what's going to happen. We're going to have a day of rest. The seventh day is a Sabbath. It's a holy day. We're going to honor, I'm going to have everybody honor me as the creator. And we're just going to have a day of rest. But on the eighth day, Adam, you and Eve are going to take on bodies of flesh. And I'm going to kick you out and put you on the wilderness of the earth. You're going to live in a place called the Cave of Treasures. And you're going to live with the devils and the demons. You're going to live with the fallen angels that I had cast out so long ago. And they hate you. Not only do they hate you, but they're going to war against your seed, and they're going to cause the murder of your children. They're going to slaughter you at every turn of the way because they hate me. And that's what happened. That's where we are. And so Adam and Eve, on the eighth day, they were transformed into flesh. And then the Lord elevated them, opened their minds, and made them aware of where they had fallen to. And when Adam and Eve, when their bodies were transformed into flesh on the eighth day, Eve is then raped by the archons. The Nag Hammadi codices describe this as well. This became the fulfillment of the prophecies of Genesis 3 also, and Eve became pregnant with Cain. And Cain was the first hybrid child born of the earth, and also the first one to be a mortal creature born after the fall. Abel would be his half-brother, a child of Adam's, and he would be murdered by his brother, Cain, who was a child of the devil, Satan. And that's why he is the first murderer, the first liar, the first deceiver. That's also why he's not in Adam's lineage. And so that's just to summarize and kind of touch up on all that. I did detract a little bit from some of what I wanted to bring forth, but I think I covered a lot of good questions, and I hope I brought clarity to you as well on some of these issues and some of this stuff. Like I said, that book that I made mention of earlier, The Sky People, and let me see if I can find it again. The Sky People, Visitors to This Planet in Atlantean and Biblical Times Are With Us Today, by Brinsley Lepore Trench. Brinsley Lepore Trench. I believe he's a French author. But this book was released even, this particular one was released back in 1960s, so it's been out for a while. But like I said, the only thing you have to have discernment on, and that's including all this other ancient alien stuff that is being brought to life and brought forth, is that you understand the differences between Elohim, Yahweh Elohim, and not as it's being presented by this guy in the Sky People book, or as it's being presented by the ancient alien theories that declare Yahweh Elohim, or who we know as the Creator, they're trying to teach you and tell you that he's one of these ancient aliens. And it's not the truth. He's the creator of everything. He created the ancient aliens, and he created us, and he created the universe. And he and his son are one. And that's what's important to understand. Because as long as you understand that the Father and the Son are one, and they're the ones that created modern-day humanity, and that they're also the ones that told us about the Nephilim and warned us about the Archons, and they're also the ones that elevated Enoch in status and made him to be a witness and a testimony to the fallen angels and their interdiction again, and how it was that the Lord allowed the books of Enoch to come to light again, and also the Nag Hammadi codices to come to light in 1946. He wants us to know about this information. He does not want you to be deceived. He does not want you to be part of that strong delusion that is going to lead so many astray. I think we should read that particular scripture. So let me pull this up. Give me just a minute here. Since we've already run out of time, and we've already arrived at the end of the show, it goes so quickly. All right, I'm going to read this. For those that don't know, the strong delusion is everything that we've been talking about, where Satan has set up the premise that the ancient aliens are our creators or are our benefactors. This has all been set up by Hollywood, by the Illuminists, everything. Every one of them that set you up for the fall, where even the most elect would be deceived, if possible. So I'm going to just start 2 Thessalonians 2, and I'm going to just start with verse 1. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. And now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them a strong delusion, that they shall believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. But we are bound to give thanks always to God for you, brethren, beloved of the Lord, because God hath from the beginning chosen you to salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth. There's that whole from the beginning. From the beginning chosen you to salvation through sanctification of the Spirit and belief of the truth, whereunto he called you by our gospel to the obtaining of the glory of our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, brethren, stand fast and hold the traditions which ye have been taught, whether by word or by epistle. Now our Lord Jesus Christ himself and God, even our Father, which hath loved us and hath given us everlasting consolation and good hope through grace, comfort your hearts and establish you in every good word and work. The Lord is going to send a strong delusion for all those that believe in the paganism, in the idolatry that he has warned us about, taught us about, told us about from eons of time through all the patriarchs, all the apostles. And that strong delusion is here to test all of us, because we're going to be called off of the fence, people. Those people that can't decide one way or the other what to do. Well, the strong delusion is going to refine the church. It's going to cause people to have to make a choice one way or the other. And not many will make the right choice. So many are going to believe that these fallen angels are our creators. And you can bet that the Antichrist will be one of them. And like I said, whether he indwells a human body, whether he takes form and inhabits, Prince William, who knows? But he will be a supernatural being. He will be one of these. He will be the one that heads them all. He will be the eye at the top of the Illuminati pyramid. And so I just pray all of you wake up to this discernment, to this truth, and to, again, don't believe anything I say. Don't believe anything anybody says. Take it to your own heart. Take it to your own discernment. Go into your prayer closet with it. Get on your knees before the Lord. Ask him to reveal to you the truth of these things. He is the final arbiter and authority for all this anyways. And people, no matter what you have in this day and age, how much firearms, how much whatever, if you don't have the Lord, you have nothing. You have nothing. He is everything. He's all that you're going to need. So get right with him. Get right with him. Just let everybody know I'll be doing a show, I believe, this Tuesday with Rob Skiba. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be joining John the Baptist for a we're going to do a special where we talk about pre-existence and all these things. So join us at tribulation-now.org on Wednesday night for 3 hours. God bless all. Take care.
A number of things that I've heard from people in the Pentagon, that the buzzword in the secret of secrets in the Pentagon is the Sumerian gods are returning, and that's what they're referring to as that whole area that Peter's.
Wow! Can you repeat that again, just in case anybody missed it? The buzzword in
the Pentagon, in the military circles that are in the know about the cover-up here, they kind of in whispered tones talk about the return of the Sumerian gods. And they're talking about the what we would call aliens or fallen angels returning into the Middle East, into Old Sumer area.
The Anunnaki.
Well, could be.
Under the other ancient names.
Do you think that has anything to do with why we're in a...
The subject matter that we cover here, I always ask you to please never believe anything that I bring forward, to doubt everything that not only myself, but that everybody else brings forward and gives to you and offers to you as truth. That you can't accept any of that without looking into it and researching it for yourself, and then verifying the authenticity of the message, of the subject, of the whatever it is that people are trying to share with you, the information. That we have to confirm all these things and not just accept them just because they may come from a place of authority or from a church elder or someone that we accept as a leader. Because I would tell you, people, what we're dealing with in the world today is an absence of truth, in that most of those people that think they know truth and are trying to teach it to a lot of the younger generation and those that are coming up in the world, they have no idea. They have no idea as to really the true nature of what is real and what we're dealing with on this planet. The whole Ephesians 6, the powers, principalities, the rulers of darkness of this world. You know, most people in this world right now even condemn, you know, like I'm talking mainstream churchianity, those that condemn without researching and looking into, you know, different extra-biblical or different pseudepigraphal or apocryphal secret books, forbidden books, because there's so much that's been stolen away and taken from you. And so you shouldn't help them in keeping truth from you. Study all that you have available, especially now in this day and age that we have access to the internet, you know, and that we can type in a few keywords and have millions of bits of information come up at the, you know, stroke of a few keystrokes, a few fingertip movements. I mean, that is amazing. The access to information has never, ever been as easy as it is now, so take full advantage of it. We have no excuses for ignorance anymore. So mythologically impossible that it is delegated to that realm of mythology and supernatural and placed somewhere in the far regions of childhood fantasy or fairy tale, you know, stories that could never possibly ever be real. And yet what we find through the archaeological record, through the artifacts and everything that we see found on not only this planet, but the heavens also are confirming the strange nature of this reality. And so we are being asked as a people, as truth seekers who've waken up and been introduced to the, again, strange nature of this discernment, we're being asked by the Lord to reassess, reevaluate, and to revisit all of those things that we have accepted as being concrete. All those things that we, as a culture, as a world, as a people, have agreed to as being reality. Because what we think of as reality, the whole 9-to-5 dream and the, you know, work till you're 65 and then retire and enjoy what little time you have left. They only picked 65 because they didn't think most of us would ever make it. And it's the truth. Most of us never make it to that age. But that's a whole different thing. So we're going to go into this. I'm going to check the chat room, and then we're going to start getting into these texts. All right. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, family. Welcome, everybody. It seems like we've got a good eclectic mix of family and friends that have crossed the spectrum of, I've seen a lot of you in a lot of different places, and so I welcome all of you and thank you. And for those of you that are new listeners that are, this is all new to you and you've not been introduced to this show or to the
Blog Talk Radio.
And in those days there were giants in the land, and the sons of the angels of God looked upon the daughters of men and found them fair, and took of them wives, and their sons became of old great men of renown. So they have been mixing with us on a genetic level since the time of Enoch and Ezekiel's will.
Here on Earth we're intrigued by the sun, moon, and stars, and imagine there's got to be planets like ours. Some conceive of a face on the surface of Mars, so in need of a meaning and purpose we lost. That indeed they believe that these might be our gods, or that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve and eventually reach what they seek and then solve all the problems of man. But they really don't know that they fall in the works of our hands are but just filthy rags. So we travel the lands to dig up our past. Time elapses and with it are much of the facts. Some imagine that God came in alien craft. They react in this way, they're so desperate for meaning and purpose, but satanic service, they know that they have evil motives. Am I making you nervous? I'm just scratching the surface. The signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. See the signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. In the blink of an eye, all believers will be raptured. Anyone left receives a mark or the caption. This leader will arise, claim his origins are alien, possessed by Satan on the side of the Nephilim. Profess those who left held us back from evolving, and now that they're gone, we'll solve all of Earth's problems. The worship of any one God will be halted. Evolve into gods and ourselves be exalted. They'll play on these lines, and in time they'll devise and arrive at a plan that will help hypnotize all the ones left behind, the spiritually blind. He's stolen their souls, now he's stealing their minds. It's already started, we're seeing the signs. Just study the word, prophecies all align. Now chop off the heads of all those who fight at one earth, one world. Aren't you excited? The signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. See the signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. Where will you be in the year 2012? Are they casting a spell they're not ready to tell? It's time to reveal what they tried to keep veiled. Pure evil they hail and they sell it so well. He fell from the heavenly realms where he dwelled, a once beautiful angel that tried to rebel. Expelled from the light into darkness and hell, now a serpent and snake with reptilian scale. He wears a disguise with angelic wings and mimics the truth with a lie so obscene. He always repeats the same thing he told Eve, that you'll be supreme, a king or a queen, that you can evolve to an enlightened being, a god of your own that can do anything. He sees on our souls with this fraudulent scheme in so many ways, but it's all just the same. See the signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near. See the signs from Ezekiel's wheel, when the skies unfold like scrolls and the breaking of seals. Heed the warning, the message is clear. Heed the warning, the time draws near.
Why hide yourself with, creating UFO crafts and things like that? Why that deception if that's indeed what's going on?
The creatures figured out that there was one way that they could frighten mankind, and that is to present themselves as technologically superior beings, some physical UFOs.
Why would they want to abduct human beings?
UFO abduction might not be caused by physical occupants, but from creatures living in perhaps what we would call another dimension.
Posing as occupants.
Yes, the same type of interfering, harassing, paraphysical creature in every culture worldwide.
To the horrified astonishment of his apprentice, the elder sorcerer explains how the human mind has been infiltrated by an alien intelligence. Don Juan said to his apprentice Carlos Castaneda, "We have a predator that came from the depths of the cosmos and took over the rule of our lives. Human beings are its prisoners. The predator is our Lord and Master. It has rendered us docile, helpless. If we want to protest, it suppresses our protest. If we want to act independently, it demands that we don't do so. Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of belief, our ideas of good and evil, our social morals. They are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations, our dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, rudimentary, and egomaniacal." According to Don Juan, the sorcerers of ancient Mexico called this predator the flyer because it leaps through the air and is like a big shadow, impenetrably black, a black shadow that jumps through the air. The flyers are an essential part of the universe, and they must be taken as what they really are: awesome, monstrous. They are the means by which the universe tests us. Welcome, friends, readers, listeners, and viewers from wherever you may be tuning in. I appreciate your fellowship, your patronage, and thank you for sharing your time and space with me. I'm honored. And I've got a pretty interesting show lined up for you today. I've been doing some research, continued and ongoing, into this whole Nakash phenomenon and tracking down the ancient mythologies, the ancient tales from wherever I can find them about these particular beings and their interdiction into the affairs of humanity. Now, the book that I cited, and I want to say welcome to everybody in the chat room, too. I've got a lot of ancient texts lined up for you to kind of intrigue you and also give you a foundation to go study and research for yourself and see if, like myself, you believe that there are connections between these mythologies and ancient traditions and lost and forbidden knowledge, the secrets, the esoteric secrets contained within the Word also seems to confirm the lunatic fringe nature of this reality, which it is seemingly fantastical, seemingly so